In the books of Kings, it talks about Solomon and how Solomon became king. He actually became king because his father was a highly favored person by God, and God promised to keep the kingdom in his family for generations. But then Solomon became the king, and God was so highly impressed with him because he kept everything where it was supposed to be. He stayed in alignment with God, and he put God first in everything, and he was just amazed. So he told Solomon, well, I'll give you anything that you want. What do you want? Solomon told him, I want wisdom so that I make the right choices to rule my kingdom. So God was highly impressed with this, highly impressed that he could have asked for anything, and he asked for wisdom. So he gave him wisdom, and he gave him many, many kingdoms, not just one, just many, many kingdoms. And he was, he was God's favored, right? Well, the one thing that he asked Solomon not to do, because Solomon was a womanizer, he liked his women. And God told him not to be sleeping around, not to be sleeping around with foreign women. Do not sleep around with these foreign women because they have idols that are not yours. They worship idols and not your God. And he told him not to marry these women because they do not worship God. They worship other idols. So Solomon listened to everything God said except for that. He got involved with these foreign women and found one particular woman who he just fell head over heels for. And they were not equally yoked. Not at all. She had beliefs that he didn't have, and God told him, do not marry this woman, because if you marry her, she's going to pull you away from your beliefs. And you will soon be building idols, worship altars for her gods. Excuse me. Well, he didn't listen. He didn't listen at all. And he married this woman, and pretty soon he was building altars for her gods. And God was very angry. God was very angry. He had told him not to do this. He did it anyway. So God took all of his kingdoms away except for one, the one that he promised Solomon's father that would stay in the generations. And he was no longer one of God's favored, and he lost all of his kingdoms except for that one. Now, in our lives, that is so important as well. Even though my family does not believe in God, the one thing that stuck with me that my dad said many years ago, because my mother did believe, and my father did not believe. So he told me that it's important that you believe the same thing when you get married, because it'll destroy your marriage. And I heard that. I did. I listened to it. I remember that. But I did not listen. Well, actually, I did, but it didn't pan out the way I thought it was going to. I thought that my ex-husband was a believer, and he turned out he wasn't. And so I didn't test the fruits, because at that time I didn't even know that there was such a thing as fruits. I was extremely in the beginning of becoming a believer. Now hindsight 2020, how that works. Now I see how exactly what my dad was talking about, what God is talking about in the book of Kings when he's talking about Solomon being unequally yoked with these people. It is an extremely important thing that you both be believers if you're going to commit to a relationship or a marriage. Even when you're committing to friendships, you need to be around other believers, because they will pull you away from your belief system, and they will get you involved in worshiping other idols, whether you believe it or not. I have actually witnessed it. I've seen it. I know that it does do that. And yet I have struggled with it because I have fell for people who were not believers. And it'll destroy the relationship. It'll either destroy the relationship or it will destroy you and your relationship with God. Fortunately for me, it did not destroy my relationship with God. However, the relationships I had before with people who were not, whether it be friendships or otherwise, if they were not a believer like I was a believer, then we have nothing to talk about, because everything that I do is about God. I live my life for God. And if they don't do the same thing, they're just going to think I'm silly. They're going to talk a little crazy about me. And I have found that to be true. And they tend to not want to be around me. And at first it really bothered me. Because nobody that I knew was believing the same way that I did. And with the circles that I was in, it was just, there were no believers that believed the way that I did. Now, I'm not saying that they have to believe exactly the way you do. What I'm saying is they have to be deeply about God, if you're deeply about God. If they are lukewarm people, chances are they are not going to fit into your circle, because they are riding the fence and they don't know exactly what they want. I found this to be a real obstacle in friendships. I found this to be a real obstacle in relationships. I'm never going to put my God second to anything or anyone ever again. I've done that, been there, ain't doing it no more. But I find it hard to gain friendships. I find it hard to gain relationships because of my beliefs, because not everybody out there is on that same wavelength. Not everybody out there is all about God the way that I am. And that makes it really hard. It makes it really hard, and sometimes it's really lonely. But then I remember I got God with me, and it's not as lonely as it would be if I didn't have God. Hallelujah. Unequally yoked is something that we really do need to consider in every relationship we have. In every relationship we have, whether it be a friendship or whether it be an intimate relationship. If you are not equally yoked, the relationship is not going to work out. Your friendship is going to die. Your relationship is going to end. It is just not going to work out, no matter how much you want it to work out. It is going to cause conflict, either by them just not agreeing with you on who God is and what He's about, or it's going to just destroy your belief system if you're not strong enough with God. It's a sad truth. It's a sad truth, but it is a real truth. It is something that we all have to deal with, and it's not really talked about a whole lot, but it needs to be talked about a little bit more, I believe, because in your relationships, if you can't bring your God into it, if you can't talk about your God, who is everything to you, and that's what you live for, then is it really a friendship? Is it really a relationship that you really want to be in? Honestly, you have to ask yourselves those questions, and you really have to take that into account. I'm not saying that you have to stay away from people who are unbelievers. That's silly. You can't do that. But as your close-knit people, you have to keep those kind of people away from you. You have to be a believer, and you have to have other believers with you so that it builds you and doesn't destroy you. Anyway, I hope this blesses you. Have a good day.